Hello listeners and welcome to this week's episode of The Cult Vault. I am your speaker Casey and today we will be continuing our coverage of Scientology. In this instalment, Kat gives her account of becoming part of the Sea Org at a very young age and even being signed over to a new guardian that she had never met. Just a quick update before we jump in. The Cult Vault app on the Google Play Store is now fixed and anyone with an Android phone can access this app for free today. It's a great and easy way to support the show and it is hugely appreciated. Likewise, my Patreon is live with monthly exclusive interviews and deep dives being uploaded. I have just finished my 3-part series on the Anthill Kids which is available to listen to today. I'm also working hard to build my social media pages, so if anybody can take 5 minutes out of their day to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CultVaultPod, you'll be helping the podcast hugely. But without further delay, here is Kat. Hello, Kat, and thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. We are covering Scientology across February, which has been a highly requested topic to discuss. So I'm really looking forward to bringing this information to our listeners. It's a fascinating religion with a very colourful history, and hopefully you can give us some more insight. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Kat and I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm originally actually from Canada. I grew up there in Alberta, in Calgary, and then I moved down to the States when I was 15. I like to hike and camp and do all that fun stuff. And yeah.
So an outdoorsy girl.
Yes, definitely where I like to be, for sure.
Yeah. Are you in a part of the world that kind of accommodates that sort of lifestyle as well?
Yes, definitely. Colorado has the Rocky Mountains going through it. And so, and Denver's like hour and a half from most of those mountains. So it's definitely a very outdoorsy state. So I'm very, very lucky to live here. I love it.
So you mentioned that you moved over to the States when you were 15. And what age did you become involved in the Church of Scientology?
Well, that's kind of a story. So I actually got into it when I was probably about 11.
Okay, interesting. So you didn't just stumble into a meeting on your own at 11 years old?
No, I definitely did not.
Okay.
So actually, we grew up Mormon. So the first 10 years of my life, we were actually a pretty devout Mormon family. I have 5 siblings, 4 brothers and 1 sister. So my parents were good in that department for being Mormon, good Mormons. And I was like Mormon till I was 10. Actually, my mom left the church probably when I was about 9. So she stopped going to sacrament meeting and all that stuff. And my dad just kept us in the church. And then when I was 10, I came home from school one day and I found out that my dad was in the hospital, and which I found out that night that he had passed away.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was very, very sudden, very traumatic. My heart is racing now as I'm talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what that did, so the best way I can describe losing a parent when you're a young kid, sorry, it's got to breathe.
No, you take all the time you need.
Okay. So the best way I can describe how that feels is that it feels like somebody just walks up to you and just punches you in the face as hard as they possibly can. And as your world is just reeling and your ears are ringing and your vision is coming in and out, it's like then all of a sudden the earth beneath you just starts to shake. And then all of a sudden there's these mountains where there was not mountains before, and there's these valleys where there weren't valleys before. And even after the initial shock of the punch to the face starts to wear off and you start to kind of get your footing again, you now have to navigate this brand new world that has mountains and valleys and all these things that you're just not familiar with. And so as a result of that and these new mountains in my life, I started getting really bad panic attacks. I was really, really worried that my mom was either going to die or my mother was going to abandon us.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't shake it. Couldn't do it. So every time she would leave the room, I'd be like, so where are you going? And I remember there was this one time when we lived in Canada, and it was in the winter, and she had parked the car outside the garage. And so that night she realized that she had to go put the car in the garage because it's going to get snowed on. And like I heard her go to the door, and like I ran over there, and I was like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And she's like, I'm just parking the car in the garage. And I was like, okay. And I remember just watching her. Like I was so sure that she was going to back out and just leave. Like it had just wrecked me in that way. So
yeah, that sounds so difficult. I mean, I don't want to armchair diagnose, but that sounds like attachment disorder.
Probably, yeah. I would say so.
Yeah, I've worked with quite a few children who have had traumatic events at young ages that have meant that they find it extremely difficult to be away from their primary caregiver. So that sounds quite similar to those situations.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So, I mean, that might not have been the case. I know I don't want to.
I would
diagnose
I would
anything, but I can imagine why that would have happened if what happened to your father happened so suddenly and out of the blue.
Yes.
As a child, you'd be thinking, well, if that could happen, it might happen again.
Right. And anything can happen. It's so destabilizing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad,
yeah.
Especially at such a young age with so many brothers and sisters as well.
There was so many of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that, Kat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it sucked. And like it was his 42nd birthday the day before. So we like celebrated his birthday. It was like a joyous time. And then the next day, like it was just, we had no idea. Like he worked a full day of work before the day he died. He had cancer.
Whoa.
But we didn't know it. He didn't know it.
He didn't know?
I don't think so. Like, I want to say you would have an idea. Like, so I found the autopsy report years later. It said his left lung was obliterated by tumors. Like, how do you not know it's obliterated by tumors? Yeah.
Yeah, or had a cough or
right.
Or some
and
kind
like,
of.
I think he wasn't feeling great, but I don't think it was like I'm about to die.
Wow.
Kind of feeling
that is worrying, because then you'd be thinking, like, if you had a little bit of a headache, you'd be thinking, like, what if it's more than just a headache?
Big C.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, you just don't. That's wow. That there's a lot of different things that at a young age would probably stay with the child and impact them quite severely. So what was your mum and dad? They were close before he passed?
I think so.
Yeah, so they were happy. You said your mum left the church, but your dad stayed in the church.
Yeah. So she had lost her faith.
Right. Okay. So maybe spiritually they weren't on the same page, but they seem to be happy in their relationship and happily married.
Yes, I think so. I've learned things later on in life that,
as you do, yeah. When you're a kid, it's always rose-tinted glasses when you're a kid, and then you grow up and you're like, wow, my parents really didn't know that much. And you grow up thinking they know everything and they're superheroes, and then you grow up and then they have opinions that you don't agree with as an adult, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, what's going on? So it is interesting. But your mum then obviously, well, I don't know if it might not be obvious. Your mum joins the Church of Scientology.
Yeah.
And so, is that through sort of having the loss of your father, and kind of, do you know what led her to make that decision? Because usually somebody is unfulfilled or in a place of kind of grief or need or unsureness on their path to move into a new or pick up a new religion.
Yeah. So what happened after that? So she had a friend who was actually a Scientologist.
Okay.
And so I'm sure, and also I'm sure driving her fucking crazy. Like I had this attachment disorder and I wouldn't leave her alone. So understandably she was like, what the fuck do I do with this kid? And so she had this friend who was a Scientologist and was like, maybe you should give it a try. Like, this would be probably really good for you and Kat. And so there was no orgs. They call the churches of Scientology organizations, but abbreviate it to orgs. So there was no orgs in Calgary, and I don't think in Alberta at the time. I'm not quite sure. So her friend was online or did services at the Celebrity Center International down in Los Angeles, in LA. And anybody listening, you should Google Celebrity Center International. Like, it's a beautiful building, and it's for celebrities. So they keep it very well manicured. So she had heard about it from her friend, and so she booked passage for us to go down and go do Scientology services to hopefully help me with this issue that I was having. So I was 10 when my dad died, and then 11 when we first went down to LA to go to see what Scientology was all about.
How was that for you at 11? Was it quite exciting going to somewhere? I mean, I know 11's sure quite young, but LA is like, woohoo, like,
yes,
this is amazing. Yeah.
Like, and when she first said LA, like, I was like, LA, what's that? She's like, Los Angeles. And I was like, oh my God, like Hollywood, movie stars. Like, I was so excited. And then I was like, I was going to go on this trip with just my mom. It was just me and her that went. And so it was so exciting, the whole thing. And I got to miss school. Like, couldn't have asked for a better trip. And it was my first time on an airplane, which I was terrified of. But I was also super excited to be able to go fly down there. And so it was super neat. And like, we landed there, and like LAX is huge, and there's like palm trees, and I'm like a little Canadian. Like, I'd been to the States before, but never to the part where they have palm trees. And so just everything about it was super neat, and I was super excited about it. And then they had someone so everything in Scientology is abbreviated, and so they call it Celebrity Center CC. So I'm just gonna call it CC.
Okay.
So they had somebody from CC come pick us up in a van, and he was very nice, very well dressed. Like, it was just like the almost like movie star experience, just getting to CC to get on lines at Scientology. So it was very exciting. And then Celebrity Center in itself is beautiful. So it's like this old hotel. I want to say it's maybe from the 1930s. It's old Hollywood. It's like right there in Hollywood. And Scientology bought it and renovated it. And like I said, it's there to cater to celebrities. So like, everything is just perfect in it. The grounds are perfectly manicured. It smells great. It's got all this old architecture. Like, it's beautiful. If it did not have a horribly sore spot in my heart, I would want to go back and see it again. Yeah.
So, I mean, is there a big age gap between you and your siblings then? If you're you go with your mum, and where do they stay at this point?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I cared at the time. So we're like basically 2 years apart. Like, my sister's 40 now. My brother's 38. That would make my other brother 36. I'm 34.
Right.
Brother's 32, and then my youngest brother just turned 30. So we're about 2 years apart.
So your mum's obviously she's just got this particular difficulty with you and your separation more so than with your other siblings.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think mine was like the biggest just out point at that point that needed to be handled.
Yeah. And are they still, are any of your family still practicing Mormons? What happens with that side of the religious upbringing? Because I don't imagine it'd be easy to just abandon what you've learned or how you've been brought up and the values and the teachings and stuff, and then just not just feel or think about that stuff anymore.
Yeah. I think it might have been just the least of my worries at the time. So I don't really remember that like being an issue. I think it might have even been a relief, like, because we'd have to wake up early on Sundays and go to church, like, and we'd be there all day. And we lived in Canada, so I remember just being so cold in the freaking wintertime and having to get in the car and all that stuff. So, like, that's kind of more what I remember. And I remember some of the teachings, but I don't think it was hard for me. I know for my sister that she wanted to stay in the church because she was 16. at the
Right.
time. So she wanted to stay in the church. And so she's like, I'm going to be a Mormon forever. But then that didn't happen. So that, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting, especially because I know there are some branches of Mormonism that would be considered sects or cults themselves.
Yes.
Was it a particular branch that you were involved in, or was it just classed as Mormonism?
I believe just Mormonism.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because if you would have
I believe
said,
so.
if you would have said fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, I would have
Oh.
said, let's do another episode.
Yes. I have done a lot of research and listening to stuff on them, and yeah, no, it was not FLDS. So
Okay. And so
yeah.
you've gone over to LA with your mum. Was it your friend, your mum's friend who so did she suggest coming over? Because I know that Scientology has this promise of fulfillment, and they have all the answers to all of life's questions and anything in the whole world in the writings of L. Ron Hubbard. So is this how your mum arrives at the decision to come over to LA? Is she kind of told that the answer to your difficulty in separation can be answered by Scientology?
I think that was more, that it was something like, because Scientologists in Scientology are super against any kind of form of psychology or psychiatry.
Yeah.
They believe that psychiatry and psychiatrists are basically the most evil people in the world to ever exist, and that if we didn't have psychiatry and psychology, and the world would be fine. So I imagine
that's a bold statement, isn't it? I mean, I don't think Hitler was a psychiatrist.
No, but they said that there was psychs. They call them psychs around Hitler. That his best friend was a psychiatrist.
What about Charles Manson? Was he a psych? There's like a list. There's a list as long as
a list. And Charles Manson, I heard, actually looked into Scientology and was like, "This is too nuts for me." Like, he looked into it. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yep.
No way. So
yeah.
So you've gone over to LA. It's amazing. You've been invited to this beautiful building that is like VIP. So that to me kind of is already almost using the love bombing aspect of manipulation and control, because not only have you gone over to LA, you've gone over to the big building, where all the celebrities hang out, and it's fancy and it's beautiful and it's well kept, and that's your first impression of Scientology. So of course you'd be thinking at that age, wow, all the buildings all around the world must be just as big and pretty.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is Scientology, sign me up, like this is great.
And then what happens? What's your journey like from there?
So we sorry, I've got my notes just to make sure I don't miss anything. So part of CC, they have a hotel attached to it, which is also very luxurious, and it's called the Manor Hotel. So we stayed there. So you're staying on the ground, so there's no reason to possibly leave the compound, if you will. So that was another thing that I was like, wow, this place is amazing. So we got a room, and then we ended up going and getting on lines. That's what they call it, like they have like their own language too. Like we routed on lines is what we'd say in Scientology, but so they have something called auditing. I don't know if you know much about that. Yeah. And so the big thing was that I needed to get auditing to help. And so we signed up for that, and I got into session, and it was actually funny because I was there for, say, an attachment disorder, and like just my mom leaving me was brought on quite a bit of anxiety. But then when we go to do auditing, we're both in this waiting room waiting for our auditors to come get us, and they take her first. And so I'm in LA in a different country by myself in this waiting room, and like I just remember like the walls closing in on me, like, oh my God, she's gonna leave me here. Like what am I gonna do if she doesn't come back? And so I like resigned myself to being like homeless in LA. I guess this is just the way it's going to be. Like, that's just how my mind worked. Like it was such a fear I had. But
It's
luckily
so
that didn't
strange.
happen.
It's like reverting back to like when you're like a baby and object permanence, you know, like when they think that when you leave the room and your baby starts crying, it's because
Oh
they
yeah,
assume that you just don't exist
just don't
anymore.
exist anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so strange. I can see
yeah,
exactly why it would have happened though.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, that's it. I'm just gonna have to live on the streets on
yeah.
my
I was
own.
like,
And
shit, I thought this was supposed to help me, but I guess not. But
yeah,
luckily the auditor did come. She did come get me. And then I don't know. Do you know much about the e-meter? You
not too much. And I'm surprised that they would have let you be audited alone as a minor as well. That's quite strange, isn't it?
um I guess so. Yeah, I guess knowing what I know now, it doesn't seem that strange. But yeah, I could see how that would be.
I
Actually, I've
mean,
never thought of that. That would,
yeah,
yeah, I
just
never thought of
because
it.
if they're going to ask you sensitive issues, it's like almost like you need a, I don't
You need
know.
an adult.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole point of it is that you are separated so that you're more, maybe this isn't the intention and I'm just jumping to conclusions, but if we're going to go through using the bite model, I would assume that they're doing it to make you more vulnerable, to separate you from your mum, so your mum's more vulnerable, and that you're more likely to open up, or they're more likely to be able to get information from you that they can use in later sessions, or they can say, you need all of these things because you have all of these issues, and this is how much it's going to cost. But that's
Right.
just
And that,
me. I don't know if that's
that,
true.
yeah. Well, one thing, I think that there's probably a lot of that played into it. I would, knowing what I know about, knowing what I know now about
Yeah, especially
them.
after researching Nexium and, watching a few
Oh my God,
documentaries on.
Nexium is so similar. They use
Yes,
so much of the same
yes.
terminology. Oh my, I swear to
Mhm.
God, he took a page at L. Ron Hubbard's book.
He
Like,
did, he did. And I think there's
I'm
actually
sure he did.
evidence that he used, oh, what do they call their EMs or something? That where they have the meetings that are basically auditing sessions, but with your peer group.
Oh, I believe that.
Um,
Yeah.
and 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 it's described in the documentary Seduced that I watched recently, that they do these sessions basically to break you down and tell you that your problem is XYZ and we can fix that.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
have to pay to come to this week-long thing for like $10,000, something
Oh, that's
ridiculous.
it. $10,000. That's a steal.
I can't believe. So they've taken your mum to another room, they've taken you to a room, you're about to be
Yeah.
audited. I don't even talk us through, like, I'm talking through my hands because you're like 11 years old and I'm so worried. What exactly happens? How many adults are there? Or like, what does the room look like?
So it's just a very simple room,
Okay.
white walls, very little things to distract you. There's a desk
Right.
in between you and the auditor. So they have the e-meter. So they use that in auditing session. So it's a machine. Again, I would Google it. That the auditor has the interface facing at them, and they have a needle that they'll use for their readings. And so connected to the e-meter is a wire, and then it comes out, and then there's two cans, and so you hold each can in one hand. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And so the way that it was explained to me was that your mind has, okay, so got to backtrack again. So they believe that your mind has two different parts to it. You have your analytical mind and you have your reactive mind. So your analytical mind is like logical. It can look at a situation and it can process it and make the right decisions. And it's where all the good parts of you is stored. And then you have your reactive mind. And your reactive mind is the place where all the negative things that happen to you is recorded. And they call those engrams.
Right.
And so it's like, so if you bump your knee on a table, you're going to be in pain and your reactive mind is going to start recording that. So your analytical mind shuts off, your reactive mind kicks in, records the pain that you're feeling from hitting the table. And now every time you see a table, you have the possibility of re-stimulating that engram. And so you're going to look at that table and you're going to feel pain in your leg. And that's because you're re-stimulating the engram that was caused by hitting your leg, kind of in a nutshell. So
right.
they
Okay.
believe, yeah, I know it's a lot.
It is. I'm just thinking about like, what about like bittersweet experiences, like, I don't know, you see your friend get married, but your other friend couldn't be there. So it's kind of like really happy, but not at the same time.
Yeah.
Where do those ones fit in? I don't know.
I don't know. Somewhere in between. Yeah, I don't know.
It was strange.
But yeah, it is strange. So they believe that when you have a thought, that it creates a your thought has mass within your mind. So you are holding the cans on this e-meter, which is sending a volt. It's as much as a 9-volt battery. You don't feel it. And it creates a circuit. So it goes through the e-meter and then goes through one hand, goes through your body, goes through your brain, then goes out the other hand. And so when they'll ask you questions, so it's not like therapy where it's like, hi, how you doing? It's like Hubbard wrote out certain auditing processes. And so I'm not sure what one was done on me, but the auditor is instructed to like just ask the questions. And so they'll ask questions and you don't say anything. And they'll be looking at the e-meter. And so when they ask a question, like, this is not an actual question asked, but like, do you have a dog that you like? And then in my mind, my reactive mind would picture a dog that I like. And so then that would cause mass that would disrupt the circuit. And then the e-meter now would read. And then that's when the e-meter or the auditor would know to bring up that question. And then you dive back into it. Yeah.
So it sounds a little bit like a polygraph test.
So that's what I've been told. So that's what they like. People who have explained it has been like, yeah, it's kind of like a lie detector test. But I've lied to that machine. I actually lied the first time I was on it. I remember. So the night before we went to LA, my siblings thought it would be really funny to give me shots of some kind of hard alcohol, and they were giving it to me, and they were like, ha 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 ha. And so I was 11. So that next day we went to LA and I was on the meter and they asked if I had had any alcohol in the last 24 hours. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I'm 11. They're going to call the cops. Like, cause you're not supposed to, in Canada, the drinking age is 18. In the States, it's 21. And so I was like, oh my God, they're going to know. But luckily I was like, no. And it didn't read. And my brothers told about a time where he had made up this whole story and he had lied to the machine. So it does detect, I think it can do that, but it doesn't, it's not admissible in court. We'll just say it's not that as good.
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
What did they tell you after you'd finished?
Well, I think so basically they'll just ask you all these questions. And so they believe, and I guess this is why it didn't seem so weird that I was an 11-year-old and going there alone.
Right.
So that we're thetans, we're spiritual beings. And so a thetan is what you are. So it's your soul. So like your body is just your vessel, and your thetan has lived for billions of years. You've had hundreds of thousands of lifetimes before. You were going to have hundreds of thousands of lifetimes later. When you die, you drop your body, your thetan goes and gets another one. You're reborn. So in Scientology, that means you can get engrams, you can do shitty things in past lives, and you're going to carry it with you into this life. So your thetan still holds on to all of that. So you can be in session. This didn't happen to me, but I've heard of it happen with other people. Because they'll ask you, like, was there an earlier similar situation when you thought of a dog you liked? And then you have to think about it. And if the meter doesn't do what they're looking for, I think they look for FM, so floating needle, then you have to keep going back. And some people like will get to the point where they're like, oh, I'm in my past life remembering this dog that I really like. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Interesting. Yeah. It sounds a little bit like, well, aside from the auditing, the thetan side of things and the engrams sounds a little bit like the karma in a lot of Buddhist movements.
Mm-hmm. In LRH, he supposedly traveled to a lot of Asian countries and stuff like that. And he took the best qualities, they said, from all these other
Mm-hmm.
religions and then made Scientology with it. So it's like the best of all worlds. And so, yeah, it's definitely very much rooted in that kind of philosophy.
Okay. So after this session, your mum has her session, and then do you kind of just like, yeah, this is cool. We're gonna see where this goes, and then officially like join? How does that work?
So it made a difference almost right away. Like I had, and for the longest time I had been like, oh, it took care of that problem completely. But thinking about it, it actually didn't. So it did help significantly. I did not keep getting panic attacks, which was very nice. My mom could leave. Like there was a lot of freedom and it really, really helped with that. But one thing that I still to this day have is I still fear people dying around me. Like, and I know everybody does, but like
Yeah.
my husband will get a call that like I'll hear it from the other room. And for a split second, I'll be like, oh my God, his mom is dead. Like that my mind will just go there. If somebody's late, I'll be like, oh my God, they died in a car accident. And I've had to learn to live with that and like be like, no, it's fine. This is something that your mind does. So it didn't take it away completely. So I want to not give them too much credit.
Yeah.
So we did that and it helped. And they have a bunch of courses. So I believe that trip I started a course. So one of the reasons why Scientology is so successful is because it does have these things that do help at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they're big on like communication courses. And so they do have a lot of like good philosophies on how to communicate better. And if you can communicate better in your world around you, like you're going to do better. If you communicate better in your marriage, you're going to do better in your marriage. Like communication is just key. So they have a lot of technology and whatnot too, or El Hubbard put together a lot of courses and stuff to try to help you. And so that's one of the basic beginning courses that you'll take in Scientology. So I routed on to do a course while we were there, because I think we were there for 1 or 2 weeks, I forget. And then my mom started a course as well, I do believe.
So you both started courses in this same week that you're over there?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we did that. And
how much do courses cost? What do they? So it's different from an auditing session. It's like a longer thing, like daily activities.
Yes. So auditing, we're talking about money. They sell those in intensive. So I believe it's like 12 hours. I could be wrong about that one. So you pay for like 5 intensives. And I think that they turn out to be like, I think it depends, but like $2,000 each, something like that. Like they're god awfully expensive each.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes. And courses, I'm not quite sure. So I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself telling this, but so Scientology is known for having billions of dollars in their coffers, and so they get that money from, so they call it regging, and I was trying to think of a word that would translate better, but basically high pressure meetings, I guess, with, so they're called registrars, they're called regis, and their whole job in Scientology is to get you to buy courses in Scientology services.
Right.
And also, not only that will they have you buy the courses, they also have something called, so there's the IAS, International Association of Scientology,
right,
which we joined right away, and you have to pay, I don't know what the membership is, the fee is. So you pay a fee and then they're like, you're in for a lifetime. But that just means that they're going to keep asking you for money on top of the money that you've already spent for these courses and for auditing, for whatever they want. So I think it had to have been the second time that we went down, my mom was regged out of a shit ton of money. So she got a bunch of life insurance money from my dad. So my dad was the main provider for our family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so she got a whole bunch of life insurance money when he died. He set us up actually very well. So she was regged out of, let me see. From what I know.
I'm nervous.
Yeah, it's not good. So I know that she was regged to put a whole bunch of money on account to stay at the Manor Hotel. So basically they're like, well, you're going to come back and you're going to come do Scientology. So you might as well prepay. I don't know how much she paid for money or for the manor. So you have a place to stay.
Right.
And for years after that, I've heard her talk about like, I'm going to try and give away my time at the manor because I've got all this time online there, but I just don't know how much it is. And I tried to find a price for a nightly stay, which I'm not surprised I couldn't find, but I couldn't find anything price wise on the manor, how much it costs. But knowing them, it's probably a lot.
Do you have any kind of estimation of how much you think she may have given?
I don't know. So I think I know she bought 2 e-meters, which I did some research on that. They're $5,000 each.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. She paid for the Key to Life course that I took, and that's $5,000. I know she paid for purification rundown for my brother, and I know that's about $2,500. I imagine because you wouldn't need 2 e-meters if you were not an auditor. So I imagine they were trying to talk her into becoming an auditor, and I think they probably were successful. So she probably paid for the training to become an auditor. Whoa. So I would imagine that's at least $15,000-$20,000. Like,
oh my goodness,
a lot of money. Yeah. So
is that a paid position in the church as well? Then
no.
20 grand to work for free. Pay me 20 grand and then come and work for me as well and work for free.
So that would be for if you were, I guess I should backtrack. If you were to be an independent Scientologist, well, I guess not really independent Scientologist because they very much, a field staff member, I think is what they would call her. So somebody who, and maybe you can make money that way if you charge Scientologists. I'm not quite sure. She actually is an auditor now. She works for the Denver org here, and she makes $50 a week. I know that. And she didn't have to pay for that training. They paid for it, but she has to donate at least 40 hours of her work week to them. She works every single day for them and gets paid $52 a week to do it. So it's not lucrative. Don't do it.
Hang on, I'm just working out. So hang on, 20,000 divided by 50.
Yeah.
Divided by 50. So $20,000 divided by $50 a week. 400 weeks you would have to work to get that money back. 400.
Well, luckily your Satan will go on forever, so you can just keep working and working and working.
That's 7.5 years.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's...
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've heard of stories, this didn't personally happen to us, of like, there are public Scientologists who like work at banks and Regis will call them. They know them, call them, and they're like, hey, so-and-so wants to donate 20 grand. Can you up their credit card limit? Yeah. Yeah. And then they'll do it. And then the person who is on the line for that money, doesn't have, like, they would not have been approved for that because they don't have the money. But in Scientology, the term is make it go right. You figure it out. You're the spiritual being. You're a Scientologist. Not only are you a spiritual being, you're a Scientologist. So you figure it out. You make it go right. So that you figure out how, whatever you have to do to pay back that money. It doesn't matter.
Oh, no.
Because Scientology needs it.
But why? They have billions and billions.
But they don't know that. Parishioners don't know that.
Especially if you're in like some kind of deep crisis, spiritually, physically, and they're promising you the answers, and you might just get them quicker if you donate money to us, and then you say, well, I don't have a checkbook on me, or my phone's run out of battery, so I can't access my online banking. And they're like, that's okay, we'll phone the bank for you, and we'll do it all for you right here, right now. Yes. Oh my goodness, that pressure. And it's just you in a room on your own.
Yes.
And your daughter might have been taken off down the corridor somewhere else. You didn't even know where she
might
is.
Be homeless in LA and you don't know.
Oh my goodness. I'm so stressed.
Yeah, it's very bad. And they think, like, a lot of public Scientologists, like, so they're being fed this bill of sale that, like, so LRH said that thank God he was the one who found Scientology. And this is the technology that we have been in a dwindling spiral as a human race. And we have this small window of time in order to correct that downfall that we've been in. And it's what we do here and now within Scientology that is going to make the difference. And so they're thinking they're saving the world. They're doing everything they can. And these are good people who have good intentions, who really want to help. But it's being preyed upon. And Scientology doesn't help. It may make your panic attacks go away, but that's like, it doesn't help in the long run. It just doesn't.
So you, oh my goodness. Right, I'm just going to get my calculator back out here for a second, because this goes on to my next question. So you've said 5,000 for an e-meter, and your mum bought 2. And then there's the course that you did for 5,000. So the course that she did in the same week that you did your first course, you think it cost maybe the same?
Probably.
So let's say another 5,000, and then she buys training for 20,000. And then your brother gets a course for 2,500. So that's £42,500. And then there's some kind of number floating around in the air of how much she's just donated to the church.
Right.
For, well, kind of like a prepayment to stay at the manor.
Yeah.
Which could be any godly amount of
any
money.
Amount. Yes. It could be any godly amount. I have no idea how much it was.
Goodness. Okay, so
it's predatory. It's
looking like
predatory behavior.
She could have spent anywhere around $100,000 on. That's just, such a wild amount of money. Like that's like I can't comprehend it. And do you think that that's? I know, because I know that Scientology comes with financial obligation. I don't think there's actually any way to be a fully fledged member and have access to the resources and the programs and the help that Scientology promises to give you if you don't financially contribute. Is that right?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So they call it donations, but they're like set donations. Like you'll donate to take this course. Like, nobody does Scientology for free.
Right. So what do you think is the average amount the average person would spend as a Scientologist, not somebody who may have had an inheritance or life insurance payout to be able to access the extra stuff that your mum accessed?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I've heard, like Leah Remini, she's talked about it, and just from a lot of people, like it's about at least $100,000. Oh
my goodness.
And they do things like have you take out loans and do all this stuff. And I think that mostly they go after people who have money. So like if you don't have money, they're not super interested in you. They may be on a surface level, maybe you'll take, because I know that I didn't take this course personally, but I know that they're like a very, very beginning introductory course is like $50. And that's would be the cheapest course. But then it jumps from 50 to like 2,500, 5,000.
I guess the $50 as well is where you'd have a session where you're told all of the things that they can do for you, but they can't do them until you move up to the next.
Right. So they call it going up the bridge. And so that's the terminology. So going up the bridge. And so you want to first get rid of that reactive mind. And so once you do that, that's called going clear. So when you become clear is when you don't have the reactive mind anymore. And then after that, then you're still, they project it, like the picture's like a ladder, but it's a bridge. It doesn't even make sense that way. But, and then after you go clear, so once you're clear, then you do all these other things. And then you want to become OT, which is operating Thetan. So it's kind of like, they sell it as like, you're getting back all your abilities that you have lost. I guess we'll jump into the Xenu narrative. When I was in Scientology, I had not heard about Xenu. Have you heard about that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, brand new. Okay. So this is something that it's called OT3. So once you've gone on the bridge, you're clear. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to this point. You've already gone through OT1, OT2, and now you're OT3.
Do they have a way of distinguishing the members? Like I know there's a system where you know, like in Nexium, they'll be given different coloured like scarves and things to wear. I don't
No.
know. No, there's no way of
Yeah,
being
nothing.
like,
Yeah.
whoa, he's like all the way up in like level 10.
Right. Well, I think that people, I don't think a lot of people necessarily do it in Scientology. So I think people just know and like, oh,
Right.
he's
Okay.
OT3. Like that's just how they would describe someone. I think also you get kind of creepy because you think you have all these abilities. And so I think it's just
Yeah.
more noticeable. I don't know. That's just me. But so OT3, they basically describe the origin of Earth. And so there was this intergalactic overlord, and it's going to sound stupid, but this is literally what it's taught, named Xenu, who was on a different planet, and we had all these Thetans, and they were just being it was like overpopulation of Thetans. And so he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to trap all these Thetans and bring them to a prison planet, which is Earth. So he tricked all these Thetans coming into his office or whatever, and he stunned them, and he put them in these like airplanes that look just like airplanes that we have today. And that was back in the 50s that he was saying. They were like B-52 bombers, maybe not, but no, that's not the plane. I forget what it was. But brought him over to the prison planet, TGAC, which is Earth, dropped all these Thetans off, put all these atomic bombs on them so they could not ever leave Earth. And so now we're all stuck on Earth in this endless cycle of being born and dying, and we can't leave. And so as Thetans, we have this ability to go off into outer space and to create planets. We can destroy things. We have unlimited capability as Thetans, and that is what they believe. And that's why you keep going up the bridge. That's why you keep doing that, so that you can restore these abilities that you once had that are being hindered by this prison planet. And then hopefully pretty soon you're gonna drop this body and you're gonna be able to get the fuck out of here and go off to your other planets and be free from this mortal coil that we find ourselves in.
But there's so much to unpick in what you've just said.
Yes. And so that is not, they don't want the public to know that, because that's really high up, and yeah, it's a lot of shit. So when I was in, like, one of my best friends would talk to me about Xeno, and I was like, no, they don't believe that. They don't believe in aliens. It's stupid. And they believe that if you hear that before you're ready, you will die of pneumonia. Like, you will die. So yeah.
Well, hang on a minute. I don't want pneumonia.
Oh, I'm really sorry. You're going to get it and die. I'm really sorry about that.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to hear about. Actually, I just made a note here, and I don't know if it's appropriate because I don't mean to mock people's beliefs. But I have just written here that he sounds like a character between Thanos from the Marvel Universe and Evil Emperor Zurg from Toy Story.
Yeah, he does. Yes, he totally does. But most Scientologists don't even know about it. And they won't, they'll either excuse and be like, that's ridiculous. Or if they do know about it, they think that you're going to die if you know it's real. And so then they deny it. So.
Well, listeners, if I stop releasing episodes each Friday and Saturday, then I feel like now this is like The Ring, you know, where everyone watches the tape.
Yeah.
Is that The Ring? Yeah, it is, isn't it? Where everyone watches the tape and then they're like, it's not real, and then they die, and
then it is. And now all the listeners are gonna die too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
Pat, what have you done?
Fuck.
So you become a member of Scientology. Your mum becomes a member. She sheds out loads of money. You mentioned that one of your brothers becomes involved as well. So is that as far as it goes, or
yeah, it's as far as well. I'm sorry. I'll let you continue.
No,
as far as it goes to my brother.
Yeah. Or do you like does your sister join? Do your other brother join? How far does it go in terms of family reach?
So all of my siblings were involved to varying degrees or another. At this point in time, like, my brother had come and there was a purification rundown, he did the purif, and then he didn't do anything else with Scientology.
Right. So you went home and you were like, wow, LA, the building, the manor, it's amazing, it's great. And he's like, I'm going to come with you. And then he comes along and then he's like, nah, it's not for me.
Like, this is actually kind of stupid.
Okay. But okay. Interesting. So the initial catch doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's interesting. And so once you become a member of Scientology and you're going over there more regularly, what does the average day and week look like for like an average Scientologist?
So I was relatively lucky in that respect. I do have well, I guess I'll tell you that later. But as far as going over there, it was expected that you spend most of your time on course or in auditing. I don't believe I got any more auditing after that point when we went to visit. I think I was just on courses doing kids communication courses and stuff like that. But they do, I'm trying to think, they definitely want like 3 to 5 hours, I think, out of like regular public Scientologists. I think they would optimally want you in there every day, but they do understand that a lot of people do have to work. But when I was there, it was all day, every day was on course.
Right. And that's because you're kind of only going over there every now and then.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's like all that time that you would have spent weekly is kind of all cramped into.
Right. But I think that they would want you to be in there, even if you live closer. Like they want you to come in as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you turn 15 and move over to America, is Scientology a big reason why that happens?
No. So no. My mom liked Denver because they do have an org here. So that was like a pull, but my family, a lot of her family lives here. And so
Okay. So you're moving over to, it's familiar territory, and there's family and friends and sort of like a network of support available in that area. It's not just flying over to be fully fledged members of the church.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Interesting. And then over time, you become more involved in Scientology, and eventually you become a member of the Sea Org. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So how does that happen? Talk us through sort of your journey from 15 years old to becoming a member of the Sea Org.
Well, actually, so I was 13 when I became
okay. Oh, I didn't realize you could. I thought you had to be like.
No, they don't give a shit about that. You're a thing. You're billions of years old. You're all good. You can join. Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually on our third trip to Scientology, or to LA, to CC. I was on break from course with my mom. And we were sitting they have something called the Rose Garden Cafe. It's just this beautiful place to sit. And we were chatting, and then the Sea Org member walks over to me. And for people who don't know, the Sea Org is like Scientology clergy. They keep Scientology working. So not every org is a Sea Org, but the big orgs are Sea Org orgs, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. I found out in my research that originally the Sea organization was actually in the sea, on the water.
Yeah.
But now I think it just all happens mostly on land.
It does, yeah. So LRH found that a lot of people didn't like Scientology, and a lot of countries were not letting him stay there. He was a big tax evader, and just Scientology was really out there. And so he thought the best course of action would be to take it to sea, international waters, where there's nobody to govern what he does. And so he took his most devout followers, purchased 3 boats, I want to say, and started the Sea Org there.
Weren't the people involved in the Sea Org originally quite militarized?
Oh, it's very militaristic.
Right.
The way that it's set up. Because he was in the Navy in World War II. And so he kind of mirrored it from the Navy. It follows a lot of that.
And so it still has principles of being quite strict with regimes and and militaristic ideology, but it's on land.
Right, correct. So they were able to move
you join land. At 13. Oh my goodness, Kat. This is just oh my goodness.
Yeah, so me and my mom were sitting in the Rose Garden Cafe, and this one Sea Org member walks over to me and says to me and my mom, and she's like, "Hey, we're showing video about the Sea Org. Do you want to come watch it?" And I was like, "Sure, cool. I like videos. Why not?" So go down there, and it's just this from I guess it's called the Sea Org slideshow. So just talking about the Sea Org and how great it is and how they're keeping Scientology working and doing all this stuff. And like at that point in time, I had no idea why they were showing this to me. I was like, cool, I guess it's just because they do a lot of propaganda. They do a lot of indoctrinating, a lot of that. And all of it's like well produced videos with like, I heard that Jason Begay, before he left, he actually did the voice for the Sea Org recruitment video.
Okay.
So it's very
very well
fancy,
done,
as it were. Yeah. Yes, very well done. So we watch it, and then she invites us into her office, and this office, like, ugh. So it's just like a white room, and then just her desk. And she sat on one side, and then there's 2 seats. Sits me and my mom down and asks us about what we felt about the video, and it was like, it was cool. Thanks for showing us, and thanks for being a Sea Org member. It looks pretty cool, I guess. And then she's all like, "Oh, well, do you want to join?" And it was like, no, I think I'm good, but thanks. Like, I'm 13. I don't want to do it. And she's so immediately like, "Oh, well, you're not 13, your body's 13, so your
things." No, because when they talk like that, I feel like there's going to be really sinister things that happen to children that are justified because actually you're billions of years old but your body's just young. No, absolutely. That's oh no.
Yep.
That's awful.
Yep. So that morning, like we were on break, and I was like, "Well, I got to get back to course." And she's like, "Well, will you come back tonight?" And I'm such a people pleaser, and I'm just doing what I'm told at this point. And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll come back tonight." So I go back that night without my mom, and just heavy duty recruitment cycle starts. Eesh. And I wish I could remember more. It was very high pressure. It was very and what I've learned later, like that's the point.
Yeah.
The point is to be really high pressure, have a lot of things coming at you fast, don't give you time to think, like, so you'll commit to it. And I kept saying, like, I'm 13, like, I don't know what you want from me. And they're like, again, just your body's 13. It's just your body, you know, you're thinking so much older. And they actually, I don't know how much you know, but they have you sign a 1 billion-year contract, which sounds crazy because it is. 1 billion years. So their motto is, we come back. So you're going to go in the Sea Org and you're going to be like, yes, this is the best thing ever. I love being a Sea Org member. We're saving the planet. How great are we? And then you die, and then you're going to come back. And then you're going to be like, oh yeah, I was a Sea Org member. And then you're going to go back to work, and then you're going to sign up again. And like that's how it was explained to me. It's just going to be this cyclical thing that you're always going to do into eternity for 1 billion years. It's crazy. 1 billion-year contract.
So Groundhog Day, but like with your life.
Yes.
And
yeah.
What are you accomplishing every time you go through this cycle?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, because and also their thing is, so Scientology right now, we have this small window to save man from crime, from drugs, from the evil psychs that are out there that are trying to destroy the planet. And we have this small window of time, and we need everybody that we can to do it. And so like putting that on my shoulders, like,
yeah.
And totally like anything I say, I'm wrong. It's you've got to save the planet. How could you not want to save the planet? You know, like I'm in the 8th grade. Like if you're putting the weight of the planet on an 8th grade shoulder, like that's too bad for you, because it's not going to work. Like my son is 12. I have to tell him to put pants on in the morning. Like I cannot imagine letting him join. And then like, I just can't imagine putting him through what I went through. Like I can't imagine that
at this point as well.
Yeah.
Your mum has been separated from you when you've been going through these. So by the time you go back to her and you're like, Mum, this is really something I want to do, she hasn't seen how you've arrived to that decision.
Right. And yeah.
And so she's obviously already invested, because she spent like a ton of money.
A shit ton of money.
Yeah. And she's, you know, she's obviously spiritually invested as well as right. Financially. So
yeah.
I mean, for you to say you're 12-year-old, you know, you wouldn't you couldn't imagine to tell him to put pants on in the morning. Yeah, you wouldn't want to put that kind of responsibility or pressure on somebody who's supposed to still be a child, supposed to run around and to cut their knees open and come in and cry and you know, get into fights with their best friends at school, and then their friends come around for dinner the next day because they've made up already and they're best friends again. So I think it's interesting how at 13 that happened to you, but I also can see how both you and your mum would have been manipulated for you to end up in that situation.
Yes.
So I don't think necessarily it's like bad parenting on your mum's behalf, if you know what I mean. Because I see I mean, how do you feel about that?
A very complicated relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
And my goal with talking about her in this interview is to not malign her, but to tell the facts the way that it did happen.
Yeah.
I guess all I can say is I do understand that. And actually, I was talking to my friend about it this morning, how she did spend all that money. And I actually didn't factor that into that maybe being a part of her decision.
Yeah. So that is difficult though, isn't it? Because I read a lot of Reddit posts. There's a subreddit called "Am I the Arsehole?" If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, listeners, because there's a lot of stuff on there, and it's interesting. And you get to see whether your opinion aligns with the general public or not. And people will say like, "Am I the arsehole for not getting my partially sighted son a dog or something?" And you read the title and you're like, yes, you do sound like an asshole. And then you read the post and you're like, oh, actually. So there's a lot on there that's always about like, am I the arsehole for not paying for my father-in-law's surgery so that my son can use the money I've saved to go to college? So when it comes down to finances and things like that, I think for the amount of children there are involved from your mum and dad, you know, obviously he probably would have wanted that money to go on things like houses for you or rent for you, cars for you, driving lessons for you, you know, food, further education, food, you know, I mean, all that stuff. When you take out a life insurance policy, you take it out with the thought of making sure that your people that rely on you are set up and don't have to worry for a prolonged period of time without you being there. So, I mean, I can see why if I put your story into the subreddit, I think your mum would be labeled as the arsehole in the Am I the Arsehole subreddit.
I would agree.
But at the same time, on the flip side of that, all of the stuff I've covered around the troubled teen industry and parents who shipped their kids off to these horrible therapeutic boarding schools where they were subjected to just the worst kind of horrible, heinous child abuse. But the parents had absolutely no idea that it was happening. The whole system was set up to stop the parents from ever finding out exactly how bad it was. So now a lot of the victims of those programs that I've spoken to today have strained relationships with their parents as well. And I guess it's kind of similar to what you're experiencing. There's kind of like how could you do that to me? But also you didn't really know what was happening to me. So I think your mum probably had more of an idea than the parents of those other children. But at the same time, like if she's not there for every single meeting that you've had or training that you've had or anything, then obviously she'll never know 100% of the extent. But then even if she was there for them, would she have seen through it? I don't know because I wasn't there. And I'm just speculating. So so I'm not sure. But I just thought it'd be interesting to ask you what your thoughts were on
I
decisions.
Think as a mother now, like I said, my son, he's 12. I just, and this also is because I've been through it myself. Like I've just vowed, like I don't fucking care what it is. I don't care if it's Christianity. I don't care if it's like any person that wants to take my kid from me, where I'm not going to be with them every day, where I'm not going to have communication with them every day, they can fuck off. That is my kid. when they're 18, if they want to do that. I really hope that they don't, but then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
right now, like, I will fight them. I will die for that to not happen to them. Like, it is.
I even think about my son, like he's just turned 1. And I even think about him like going to play school and nursery and somebody else like having to change his nappy and not doing it the way I would do it. And I'm all like, and I don't know if it's because I've been like in lockdown with him for basically since he was born. So it's pretty much just been me and him. And sometimes, you know, on the days we're lucky enough for my partner to be off work and he's here too. But it's just been the 3 of us. So I get really like, I get really on edge when I think about, you know, him even spending time with his grandma and her not knowing exactly how he has his naps and things like that. So, I mean, I imagine it only gets more severe as you get older and your child has more wants and needs and thoughts and independence and you're like, but you don't know every single thing about them.
Like you would play video games all day. You would eat candy all day. You wouldn't go to school. Like, these are things that you have to prompt your child to do. And so I can't imagine doing it to my kids now. I also, my mother was widowed with 6 kids, and that has to be taken into consideration. That I can't imagine what that's like. And I've tried really hard over the last couple of years to try to view it more through that lens. Because a lot of things happened with her, and trying to view that. I also think that there is undiagnosed mental illness there.
Okay.
I think there's a personality disorder. So I don't think she could have done any differently than what she did.
And she's still a member of Scientology now, so it's obviously a very important part of her life.
Yes, it is her most important part of her life.
And I suppose now, obviously, you talking to me today and telling me things that I think the church wouldn't be happy for you to tell me means that you're not a part of Scientology. So then there's another divide there between you and your mum.
I haven't actually talked to her in like 4.5 years. So
okay.
Yeah, so we're not connected at the moment, and I don't know if that'll ever be reconciled. So
okay. So do you find out, do you have updates from your siblings on kind of how she is or anything, or you kind of just...
she's doing okay. Well, she's definitely still doing Scientology. That is her life. She works 40 plus hours for them. She's struggling to get by otherwise. She makes $50 a week.
Goodness.
I mean, that's a life she's chosen.
That's so sad though, because that's not what your father would have wanted for her at all, for her to struggle financially and for her to be so alienated from, you know, even just one of her children, especially because that sounds like you've gone from like one extreme to the other, you know, not being able to leave her side to kind of just not being in touch with her really at all anymore. So this is the kind of theme we see quite often in these situations. I did a month of Jehovah's Witnesses, and 50% of the people I spoke to have no contact with their family anymore.
Really?
They're just completely shunned because their family's still in the church. They're not in the church, so they're not allowed to speak to them anymore, because that's one of the rules of being a Jehovah's Witness. You're not allowed to have any contact with people who are disfellowshipped. So the other half have managed to not officially be disfellowshipped, so they can still have contact with their family because they've moved, and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the elders don't have their addresses to tell them that they're disfellowshipped. So they're people are working out ways around it, but but you just said that Scientology has something similar.
They have disconnection, and that's basically the same thing. If you can't talk to, like, if me and my mother had been talking at this point, she would have to disconnect from me. But yeah, if somebody is speaking negative about Scientology, speaking out against the church, you can't talk to them. It's all part of their
Okay.
control. Like you just can't do it.
Okay. So maybe after today's episode, I'll never be approached to be recruited.
Oh no, yeah, no, you're safe. You're already speaking out against it. So
Oh wait, hang on. Isn't there a word you mentioned?
disconnection.
No, a word for people like me.
Oh, wogs.
Yeah. So wogs. When you sent that to me, I had to make a note that that is actually a derogatory term that's used against people of color.
Yeah, I
It's
didn't know
actually
that
a
until I
yeah, it's a
looked that up.
racist term. I don't know if it's mostly in England. So
I
when you
think it
wrote
is. From what
that,
I looked at, it is.
I was reading your notes out to my partner. I was writing questions as we go, and that was the document I sent over to you. And I was like, oh, listen to this terminology that Scientologists use. I think this is really interesting. And when I read out the word wogs, my partner was like, well, I think you should be really careful saying that on an episode. But once I'd given the Scientology context to it, it was a bit different.
Yes.
So when we use that word in this episode, we're absolutely not using it in the term
Oh yeah.
of to be racist in
No.
any way. But
Yeah.
there were two different things you sent me over. WOGS was one of them. So what? Just remind me what that means again.
So WOG is anybody who's not a Scientologist. So it's short for worthy oriented gentleman. And actually, it was like, so LRH was super duper racist. And he had spent a lot of time in Asia and China. And he said the biggest problem with China is all the Chinamen. And I know that's an incredibly inflammatory thing to say, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
And I had no idea until you said that. And I looked that word up, that it was such a bad word in England. It looks like it is just a British thing and that part of the world. Which makes me never want to say it again because that's crazy. But it is in the world and it is very much derogatory when used in the Scientology term. Like
Right.
You're not Scientologist, so you're dirty. You're not enlightened. You're not cool.
And then there was also Dev T and DB you mentioned as well.
Yes, and actually I wrote a whole bunch of words. I don't have to read them all, but I wanted to have a lot of examples for you.
Yeah, because in the bite model, one of the methods of control is using loaded language or your own language or your own terminology, and what that does is it brings you further into the movement because you understand the language and people on the outside don't understand the language, so you're part of this thing that is separate to everybody else. So you keep using abbreviations and shortening down words and using kind of all this terminology. Luckily, you're explaining it to us as you go. But if you wouldn't have been telling us, oh, and this stands for this, I would have had I would have been so lost in this discussion. Because it sounds like there's just a whole extensive, it's not just a few words or a few buzzwords. It's like a whole language, like a whole extensive language.
Yes, it's a whole language. And then a lot of the words, not only did he make up the words, and then he abbreviated them or made them into acronyms. There's so many of them. So Dev T is developed traffic. So anything annoying, frivolous activities that cause a hassle. So like, are you just causing all this Dev T? Like, that's how it would be used. It wouldn't be used in anything positive. DB is a degraded being, and that's like super bad. Like, you don't want to be called a DB. Like, if you're degraded, the word degraded is highly terrible in Scientology. And a degraded being is like one of the ultimate insults that you can give. So if somebody is seriously calling you a DB, it's bad. There's a whole bunch. Like there's like the if you're being in theta, you're being a jerk, something negative, sad news. So like I got really in theta news today, or the news is just so in theta. Or then there's theta, it's like your good energy, good news. You can be to describe like someone who has really good energy. Like I've heard someone be like, yeah, they're really theta, like they're really cool. And just and then in turbulate, is to upset. So like one thing is like you don't want to upset anybody who's doing Scientology because you don't want to interrupt their journey up the bridge. And so like you don't want to turbulate anybody. Like that was just such turbulating news. And then acronym. So like the MEST universe, the MEST world. So the MEST stands for matter, energy, space, and time. So it's our physical universe. It's everything around us. This chair is part of the MEST universe. But it's also something he made up and then put it in an acronym, and you wouldn't fucking know what I'm talking about if it didn't explain it to you.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. And I could keep going. There's so much, and this is just like,
it's just a way to keep people on the outside, keep them on the outside, isn't it? And then also like it's made me think of Mean Girls when she's like, that's so fetch, and they're like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not gonna happen. Like,
it's not gonna happen.
Oh, I'm so like my feelings are so in theta. Like, stop it. It's not.
Yeah, like this is a very in theta.
Yeah, but podcast. It seems like it just rolls off
really interpolating.
It just rolls off your tongue. So
yeah,
you've obviously had a lot of exposure to all of this stuff. So you join the Sea Org when you're 13. I don't. When I in my last interview, there was a lot of talk about how you are expected to go and live on campus almost with when you're part of the Sea Org. So did that happen with you?
Yeah. Let's see. So after the 2 days of heavy recruitment and just, it was like screaming into the void, like where I was just like, I don't want to do this. But also I didn't know I could speak up for myself. I was a Mormon girl, like we don't have a voice. Like that's just how I was raised, and be polite. And so just trying to tell these people, and also they were love bombing me. Like I didn't want that to go away. Like, you know, we have to clear the planet. So that's getting Scientology implemented and then getting rid of people's reactive minds. And this will get rid of the drug crime problem. All the problems that we have in the world is if we just implement that. So after 2 days of just heavy recruitment, I finally was like, fine, I'll do it. And I just remember like just breaking inside, because it did mean I would have to move to LA, away from my family, my friends, my mom, everything.
Yeah.
And I would be working, living, doing Scientology, keeping Scientology working. And so I was like, well, I don't know if my mom's going to let me, so we'll just see what she has to say. And I was so hoping she would.
You're like, she'll never let me go.
Yeah. But then like, so they're like, don't worry about your mom. We'll handle her. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see, but okay. And then that night they called her down and I told her, and it wasn't a fight really. I don't know. I think she may have protested for a smidgen of time, but she said that I looked at her and I said, I really want to do it. And so she said, okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
And looking back, like, so they do have disconnection in Scientology. And also if you're a SP, a suppressive person, so it's the antisocial personality. It's somebody who, basically 2.5% of the world, or 2% or something like that, LRH said, of the world are SPs, and there's no help for them. They just can't be helped, and they also want to bring down anything good around them. And so in Scientology, that is Scientology. So anybody who speaks out against Scientology, who has a negative thought about Scientology, who can't be handled and brought back into the folds, is considered an SP, and they'll be declared an SP. And so now every Scientologist in their life cannot talk to them, or else they'll be declared an SP. So my mom said that she was worried that she would get declared, but also we were very lightly in Scientology at the time. So it's like, what would that have done to you?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Your friends, family were not in Scientology if you got declared. But then again, that's where the money comes in. That's where she does have something on the line. So I guess I could see it more.
Yeah, I definitely, there's so many similarities that I'm drawing here between the Seduced documentary I watched on Nexium and this situation, particularly with you and your mum. Because have you watched the documentary?
I haven't. I listened to some podcasts on it, but I haven't.
It's definitely, if you find the chance to watch it. I watched it on, what did I watch it on the other day? It's on Stars, so I watched it on Amazon Prime through the Stars channel, and the documentary itself centers on one person's experience and how her and her mum started going to sessions together and how they carried on paying to go further and further and further, and then the mum kind of pulled back, but the daughter was like, this is something I really want to do, so the mum supported her without realizing actually what was happening as she continued to become further and further and further indoctrinated into the movement until the point where she was branded and did become a slave and did have her own slaves. So it's we'll get to NXIVM at some point.
That's so crazy
on the podcast. It's
the human condition is crazy how people can be, and it's smart people that we just can fall for those kind of things.
And that's often a big misconception. So it's just it's just interesting to hear you speak about, you looked at your mum and said, I want to do this, and she's kind of thinking, well, I don't want to be labeled, and if you're saying you're okay with it, then cool, so let's go. So you join. So do you have to, so you move to LA?
So I actually never went home. I just stayed.
Wow. Okay. So when you said that you moved at 15,
that was after the fact. So I had moved when I was 13 down to LA, and then for the time I was there, then I moved back to Canada, and then after that we moved to the States. Back to Colorado. My
goodness, you're 13 and you stay in LA and your mom goes home?
Yes.
Oh, what?
And so they so
you're just your livelihood, your well-being is just entrusted to Scientology.
And so since I was a minor, she signed over guardianship to just a random Sea Org member. So that they could legally be covered in that.
Somebody that you didn't even really know.
I hadn't met her before, and I maybe saw her twice while I was there.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
my goodness.
So she sent me over, and then so they have.
How is that even allowed? That's smoother than the adoption process. What is that all about? What about if you give your kids away? You're allergic to bee stings and you have an EpiPen, and your person that's suddenly supposed to be responsible for your well-being doesn't even know how an EpiPen works? What?
The church would cover it up. They wouldn't take responsibility for that. My mom would be blamed. She would be the person who left me in LA alone. I can't believe it. Yeah, they would spin it. Yeah.
I can't. My goodness.
So she went back to Canada and I stayed. And so they have something called the EPF, the Estates Project Force. So it's like the boot camp for Sea Org members. So you start off on that. So as I was routing onto the EPF, so mind you, I was living in Canada, and in the States, in order to work and get paid, you have to have a social security number. I didn't have one. So we're doing the paperwork, and one of the guys was like, it was just a room full of people working on getting me on the EPF and doing all the paperwork that it entails. And he stops and he's like, what's your social security number? And I was like, I don't have one. And I swear the room stopped and everybody was like, fuck, what do we do with that? And then he just stopped. He's like, well, it's okay. We just won't pay you. And Diane, my mom, you're just going to have to get her social security number. And so it's not like you get paid much. So as a Sea Org member, you get paid $47 a week, something like that. So they do cover your room and board and food, but it's like a bed in a room with a bunch of other people, and they cover your food and cover basic necessities. They provide uniforms. So that's what they're saying. You're working, your exchange is that you're getting all that. And then you get on top of that $47 a week for toiletries, cigarettes, whatever you would need. But I didn't have a social security number, and the law-abiding citizens that Scientology is, they were not going to pay me until I got that. So I routed onto the EPF, and
So what about school at this point? is that it?
And no, I'd stopped. That was it. That was it for school.
Oh my goodness.
The EPF is supposed to take 5 days. It took me 7 months. So they have 5 introductory courses that you take. And then while you're taking those courses, you are doing 5 hours of study a day, at least 10 hours of manual labor. It's 7 days a week. And like LRH said that, try and get this quote right, but the best outcome of the EPF is that maximum amount of study and maximum amount of work and little amount of downtime.
And what does the
So
manual labor consist of?
whatever the fuck they want. So what I started off on, once I got my uniform and I got my bed, is they sent me over to the construction unit. So Celebrity Center, beautiful building. Right across the street they bought this building called the Bronson Building. And it had been an apartment complex, and it was really run down. And so they were having Sea Org members do the construction on it, or
Right.
I guess demo is what the stage we were in. So I went to I started off on that unit, the construction unit, and I think there was like 5 or 6 units, and each one did different. Like one worked in the galley, one I think did grounds. The other ones I know they helped in the Manor Hotel. They helped housekeeping, do all the work there. So it's just wherever they needed grunt work, basically.
So
where the EPF would step in.
Weeks worth of manual labor for free at this point as a 13-year-old, because you can't be paid because you don't have a social security number and you're like a minor. That's saving the world.
Yes.
I don't understand.
One toilet at a time. Yeah. I guess I do understand now, because it's just how they keep you in, and they got free labor. They pay you so poorly,
and
they get this free labor, and so they don't have to spend a lot of that money that they get.
The last person I spoke to as well, he mentioned that when he arrived at the Sea Org, he didn't realize that they wouldn't give him like shampoo and body wash and a razor and things like that, and he had to be clean shaven every day. And then when he for some reason the system had messed up, so he didn't get paid for weeks. But then when he was finally getting paid, all of his money was having to go on those things that they didn't provide for him anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's the name of the game for sure.
So, I mean, what happens after your initiation? Like once you're finally enrolled, are you still 13, or does it take a bit longer?
So I was 13 through most of the EPF. So do
you share a dorm with other minors, or are you in a dorm with like adults?
Adults, whoever was there. There was a lot of kids there, like teenagers, and like here actually, people won't be able to see it, but that's actually me, and then that's my birthing. So I had the top
tiny bunk. Look how tiny you are.
Yeah, it's just like
And that's your uniform. No. That's the uniform.
That's the EPF uniform, and so it's communal. So they have, like, you go to the room next door, and they had like small, medium, larges, pants, and everything like that. And so then you would go and pick out your uniform. And then if they didn't have the right size uniform, then you would just pick the next size up. And so we had that room. So there was a bunk bed, and then 2 normal beds in that room. We shared a bathroom, and there was another room. And that was, what was that? That had 2 beds, I want to say, in there. And so we all shared, but you didn't spend any time there. You slept there. But all you did was you cleaned it. You made sure that it was perfectly clean. Your bed had hospital corners. They would do a white glove test where you had to make sure that there was no dust. And if there was any dust, like, it was really bad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the militarized part of it that I was. When you were approached by a member of the Sea Org initially, when you were with your mum, were they in uniform? Is it a uniformed like section of Scientology? Yeah. So if you saw someone down the street, you'd be able to say, "Oh, they're a member of the Sea Org."
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
I just want to hear your story, but I keep like butting in with questions about different things.
No, I feel like when telling it, and that's why I appreciate platforms like this, because like it can feel so alone with having this experience. And then like when you talk about it, like you have to explain the language, the way that it was. Like there's so many things, and unless you have been a Scientologist, you don't understand it. And so like questions are Yeah, I totally get why you would be asking questions.
Yeah, so in my old job, it used to be quite complex and there were lots of different layers, and I'd always forget that people didn't know everything that I knew. So I'd just be doing something and I'd just expect somebody to know how to come and help me without explaining how to do it to anyone.
Right.
And then I'd have to stop and be like, oh, I'm really sorry. So this is how we do this. Because you just when you live and breathe something for so long, you just forget that nobody else knows what you know, or so it is
second nature.
So you're 13, you're in the Sea Org, you're living there now, you've got some stranger as your guardian, and you've got your uniform, you're saving the world one toilet at a time. So when you say that you moved over to Denver at 15, do you leave the Sea Org? How does that work?
So I guess yes, I had left the Sea Org. I was on the Sea Org the EPF for 7 months, and that's where like a bulk of my Scientology story is.
Right.
And so it's 5 hours, 5 hours a day of studying, 10 hours of manual labor. So it was basically like 105 hours a week. There was no days off. I didn't get paid. I was so stressed out. So like, you're a Sea Org member, so you're a Scientologist. Not only that, you're a Sea Org member, and so you're expected to be superhuman is the best way I can describe. Like you have to perform everything perfectly and fast, and the culture is highly abusive. Like, I don't know if you've watched any like YouTube videos, or even on, I think, some of documentaries where Sea Org members are like aggressively attacking people who have left the Sea Org, and it's just basically yelling. Like, that's the culture. Like, that's how they talk to each other. That's how they talk to me. That's how I was expected to talk to people. And I'm so grateful I got out before I became a raging asshole. But so it's just everything, and you have to run everywhere you go. If you're on the EPF, you are running. If you're caught not running, you're in trouble.
What happens when you get in trouble?
So they have their own ethics system there, so you can get right up. So they have a KR. So this is like the reporting culture I was talking about.
Yeah.
They basically, so it's called a KR, or knowledge report, and you are expected to basically tattle on all of the people around you. Like, it's just like, and then if you let something slide and then it comes to light that you did, like, you're going to be in trouble. So that's the culture. So it just, you report everybody. So if you get caught not running, you'll shoot a new one. They will treat you like you have, I don't know, punched somebody. Like, it's that bad. It's that egregious to them. And I think that, EPFers are looked on as like just the peons too. So there's an even extra level of disregard for them.
I just still can't get over the fact that you're so tiny at this point, and you're still a baby, and you're being shouted at and screamed at and being made to do 15-hour days and run everywhere and do manual labor, and you're so tiny in that picture. And you're just sharing a dorm with random people. Like, you could be sleeping on a bunk with like a 60-year-old above you. Like, I can't get my head around it. So
they did separate the genders, if that makes it any better. But
I know, like, that it sounds like they have their own sort of policing system. Like, if you mentioned they have their own ethics system, then I'm sure that there's no authority that comes around to make sure that they're, within guidelines of everything. But
no, definitely
but there should
not.
Be. That shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be.
They only care about how it looks on the outside world. Like, they don't care. They don't care. Like, they don't. And everybody is so stressed out and so on edge. They don't want to get in trouble.
I just can't get my head around it. In schools over here, you're not even allowed to be one-on-one teacher pupil with the door closed.
Really?
That's illegal. Like,
which is good though. But
I mean, there's a reason that those policies and laws are in place. And policies and laws are only changed or brought in because of things that happen. People don't just go, oh, actually, we should probably have something like this in place. it takes, like, they brought in this thing over here. They used to call it CRB certificates, but now they're DBS certificates. And basically, to work with children or vulnerable adults, you have to have a DBS certificate, which basically tells your employer or whoever you're working with, like, even if you were to go and volunteer for children's services or anything like that, you have to have one of these certificates that basically says all of your criminal record history on it, and will include things like sex offenses and things like that. Because there were two young girls who went missing over here a few years ago, and they were called Holly and Jessica. So any British people, and maybe even further afield than that, listening now will remember when Holly and Jessica went missing. And then eventually they were found. Unfortunately, they had been murdered, and they were murdered by the caretaker of the school who abducted them and had previous criminal records of indecent assault against minors.
Oh my God.
So because they didn't have these things in place, like CRB certificates, DBS certificates, that's why that was then brought in. So the fact now that a teacher and a pupil have to have the door open, or there has to be another pupil or adult present, you know, it's not only to stop false accusations from the pupil saying, well, the teacher said this to me or did this to me, you know, not only does it stop that, it also stops any abuse that might be perpetrated on a pupil from a teacher. So I can't believe, that's why I'm finding it, and because I worked for a children's charity for so long and worked with hundreds and hundreds of vulnerable children, that's why I'm finding it so shocking and can't get my head around you being 13 and just being signed away and just and you're just existing in this place with all these adults that are just shouting at you, and it's like you're really, really, it's kind of almost the same as the therapeutic boarding schools, but like for children that are sent away to boot camp because they're uncontrollable. But you're just attached to your mum. You're not doing anything wrong. There's not anything wrong with you. You're just struggling with attachments, and I don't know. It's just so extreme. I can't. I'm just struggling with this one.
Very extreme. Yeah, no, it's bad. It's definitely bad. And like, one thing is that I was able to call my mom because I was 13. Like, I think I, like 2 or 3 times a week I could go. And so the first time I went to go call her, I went to one of the public payphones there, and like our Sea Org member had escorted me down. And he's like, okay, here are the payphones. You know, you got a calling card, do this. He's like, oh, and just so you know, we listen to all these calls. So if you tell your mom anything bad that's happening, we're gonna know, and we're gonna have to handle it. Like it's gonna be an issue. So like, you do not tell your mom anything but positive things that's going on.
Exactly the same as the therapeutic boarding schools. If the kids said anything, they would phone the parents back after the conversation and say, they're lying to you, they're manipulating you, you can't listen to anything they've said because it will make them go back on the progress they've made that you're paying for. And then
that's so fucked up.
And then would reprimand and punish the kids after the fact. So it sounds similar. And I know I say this all the time, but you know, there's a reason why these things are similar. Those boarding schools have their own language. They have their own policing system. They have their own ethics and punishments, and Scientology does the same. And so many of these movements we talk about will have their individual own versions of these things. And that's because they all share similarities of manipulation and high levels of control in their own ways, but also in the same ways.
It's so upsetting to me to think about, because it's true. It's like anybody can be manipulated that way. Like it's not outwardly apparent. And I think it exists in politics, like Trump. And not everybody who supports Trump is a super radical. I have friends who support him, which I have tried very hard to understand and just be like, okay, like you're Republican and he represented the Republican Party and that's the value you stand for. But then there's people who are hardcore. Trump can't do anything wrong. His family is the best first family ever. Like the best first family ever, really? Like what have they done? And even if you do like Trump, like to give him godlike status that he can do no wrong it's the same thing. It's crazy, and yet we're so susceptible to that. It's the human condition, and it makes me mad. I wish that it wasn't that way, because now anybody can use it against you. It's crazy.
I think Trump's more of a cult of personality for sure. I mention him every episode as well, so I apologize to the listeners for that.
No, it's okay. I think it's good. We're on the same wavelength.
So you're in, what I mean, just what is your life like from this point onwards? You know, what does your timeline look like?
So doing the manual labor, I was on course. I got really stuck on the courses. Like, I had very little immersion in Scientology before. Like, I would go down and so maybe 2 or 3 weeks total of Scientology in my lifetime, to going from that to just being completely in it. So I had to learn the language. They have something called study check, and misunderstood words called MU, where if you go past a word that you don't understand, that it can cause you to blow, which is an unexpected departure. You'll get angry and get undue anxiety, but it's not quite that, but it's undue angst, or it will cause an anxiety breakdown. If you go past a word you don't understand. So in the course room, you read the material, and it's written by Hubbard, and he just fucking drowns on. The guy is mind-numbingly boring to listen to and to read his stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it doesn't make sense. And so not only is he using these big words that as a 13-year-old I had not been exposed to, he's also throwing out all these Scientology terms. Everybody around me is talking in this other language. And if I run into a word I don't understand, I can get in trouble for that. So I have to make sure that I'm clearing all these words. So that took a long time in the course room, working. And then when I would talk to my mom, I was terrified that they would hear something in my voice that wasn't right. And so I was just like, oh yeah, everything's great, everything's good. And I couldn't let her know anything that was going on. Every morning we would have musters where we'd have to go, and we would do military drills where we would do left face, right face, do what you would do in the military. We would get yelled at for not being superhuman. And I found out later it's also doing roll call to make sure that nobody blew, that nobody left. And I would work in different units. I became a unit IC and in charge at one point in time. And I was actually in charge of this unit that was cleaning the grounds at CC. And one day, actually, I was in the bathroom. There was a public restroom. I had 2 stalls. I was by myself, and then I heard the door behind me open and close, and I was like, uh-oh. So I looked over, and there was this one dude who was probably 40, something like that. I was his IC, and he said, Catherine, I was met by Catherine at that point. He's like, Catherine, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And he starts getting closer and closer to me, and he's no. I'm in love with you, and I want to have sex with you. And I was like,
what?
What the fuck? Yeah. And so he gets closer and closer, and I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm in love with you and I want to have sex with you. And he goes and he's backing me into the corner, and his arms come out.
No.
And I duck underneath him and I run out of there as fast as I can. And so in the Sea Org, and this is the fucked up thing, because I was almost attacked. But the thing I was really worried about was that sex in the Sea Org, you only have sex unless you're married. And even then, you probably shouldn't do it, just to be safe. Any if you kiss, that's fine, but any heavy petting, that's a horrible term, but they use it. Anything like that is considered going out 2D as being it's bad, and you can get in trouble for it.
Right.
So my thought process was, holy fuck, they're gonna get mad at me because this dude tried to come on to me, and they're gonna think that I'm out 2D. And 2D is so they believe that there are 8 dynamics of existence and survival. And your first dynamic is your self dynamic. Your second dynamic is your children, your family, and also your sex dynamic. So they abbreviate that down to 2D. So if you're talking about a 2D, you're talking about a romantic interest.
Okay. Yeah.
So 2D flowing is sending romantic vibes out to somebody. So that's what I was terrified if I didn't report it that I was going to get in trouble for going out too deep. Like
Yeah.
that was what my concern was. So I ran out of that bathroom and I ran over to the reception desk and I tried to page the EPF in charge, the EPF IC, so I could tell him like, oh my God. And then he took forever to come. It was like an emergency. Like he took forever to come. And so also now I'm stuck with this, like, oh my God, they're going to be mad at me for pulling in this 2D exchange. And then I'm not working. You're supposed to always be working. But I was sitting in the lobby waiting for that EPFIC to come. And it was like just excruciatingly long, just waiting for him to show up.
This is awful. This is, oh.
Yeah. And so then when he finally showed up, I told him what happened. He's like, oh, is that all?
No,
and I was like,
no, the whole.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, go back to work. I'll handle it. And then that was it. That's all they did.
Did you see this guy? Did you have to carry on seeing this guy? Oh my goodness.
I think that they might have transferred him out of my unit. I don't think I was in charge of him anymore, but he was definitely still on the EPF. And I saw him every day at meals. Tried to stay clear of him.
The thing that really, really worries me about this situation is that luckily, thank goodness, you weren't harmed physically.
Yeah.
Emotionally and psychologically, absolutely. But physically, you weren't harmed. You could have been, and you could have been her, and you could have made that same call, and he could have taken that long to get to you.
Yeah.
And then still had the same response.
Yeah.
If you had been
I probably would have gotten
harmed.
in trouble for it. I've heard of other stories where people have come out with that kind of
that's what I was going to say. I mean, other people in similar situations to you might not have had the same outcome where they were managed to get away from their attacker.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And you're still 13.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty shitty. Another thing that we did was since Scientology or the Sea Org was founded on a boat, we would go to this sailboat in Long Beach, California, where we would go work on the boat that day. So we could get an idea of what it was like to be on a boat. And the captain and the boatsman, like thinking about this through older eyes, like they weren't Scientologists, but they were assholes. They were told to be assholes. They got free work on their boat, but I think they must have been told to mistreat us terribly. And so they did. So we'd go, like, I'd never been on a fucking boat before. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And we're like taking out the rope and the tar from in between the planks of the boat's planks on the deck, and then repacking it in, and then using blowtorches to like melt the tar. And we would clean their disgusting galley. And they all while they're just hanging out over us being like, you didn't do that right, you didn't clean that right, like just like being assholes about it. I hated going to that fucking ship. Like, and then we would bring stuff to make sandwiches, and it would be like this really white bread, horrible bologna, and then unsalted peanuts. And like to this day, I can just still remember what that tastes like. And like our hands would be so full of grease, but we'd have no way to wash them. So like you'd have like grease smears on your white bread, and you had to eat it if you wanted to eat. Like it was really gross. I really hated doing that. Yeah.
I just, and you're all this time, I just keep thinking you're like 20, 30, but you're not. You're just so tiny.
13. Yeah.
And you mentioned before as well that in Scientology, generally, you're expected to be married to another Scientologist before you have sex.
Yeah, in the Sea Org.
Oh, right, in the Sea Org. Because I was going to say then, what are the views around like same-sex relationships or the LGBT community?
So LRH said that it's an abbreviation or aberration. Sorry. So it's a departure from what it should be, and so he said that all gay, lesbian, all that stuff is not okay, and so they're very against it. They'll say that they're not, but I guarantee you they are. And actually, when I was in high school, so I'm bi, and my mom at the time, and so I was in high school. She thought that I was gay.
Right.
Rightfully so, sure. And she had pulled me aside one day and just said, I can't have a gay child. You're going to have to handle this. You're going to have to fix this.
What does she mean by that? Why can't she have a gay child?
I got it. Because it's, I don't know. I think religion has a big part in that. Like, she just can't have a gay child. It's not okay. It's not acceptable. And
I don't get it. I have a milk allergy, so I can't eat a bar of chocolate, but I don't get why she can't have a gay child. What does that mean?
Because she's a Scientologist who was a Mormon who was a Catholic. You can't have a gay child.
Oh my goodness.
So
and then she's saying you have to handle it. Like, you're like, oh, yeah. Okay, then I'll just switch it off.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah. Because that's how it works. So
no. So then you're obviously, that message from your mom transpires into your time spent in Scientology as a member of the LGBT community. You're thinking,
what's that?
You're thinking, well, I can't be authentically who I am because my mom told me that.
Right.
You can't have it.
And I already struggled with it so much because I was Mormon, and like that's heavily taught there too, that's strong. So when I first developed a crush on a girl, like it was devastating. I could not believe that. Like it was like that couldn't be. I couldn't be a gay child. Like that's just not how it could be. So I struggled with it for years and years. And then when it started to come out a little bit, it was, I can't have a gay child. You need to handle this. You need to fix this.
No, that's not the right way to do things. I mean, I know that it and I don't want to just blanket it and say it's a generational thing, because that's not the answer at all.
Yeah,
but I'm sure that your views now, if your son was to come and tell you the same thing, your reaction would be a polar opposite.
Oh yeah, and I tell like both my kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I tell them both, like, it's not something you can help, and if it's ever something that you find yourself to be, like, that's fine. Like they just get to be who they are.
Yeah.
They just get to do that. And if that's gay, if that's bi, if that's straight, that's fine. Like, I just want them to be happy and healthy. And that is one way to make them happy and healthy, is to accept it.
And support their choices and decisions. Yeah. And orientations of any type.
Yeah. Because I can tell you it's not a choice. You don't choose it.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not in high school anymore, obviously. You're not in any type of formal education other than Scientology education, and so do you suppress this part of yourself? Do you meet anybody whilst you're there who you have a little crush on? Or I mean,
I did have a crush on a boy, and then there was actually, looking back, like I think I totally had the hots for my recruiter who was a girl, like, and I think that's one of the things that got me to like keep coming back, because she was showing interest in me, and like I wouldn't have acknowledged that at the time, but looking back, like I think that's what that was.
Right. Yeah. Because you're still only little, so you're allowed to have little crushes on people, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's all it was. It was just a crush.
But not be approached by a 40-year-old man who's going to pin you in the corner of a bathroom.
Yeah. That's not cool.
Oh, that's terrifying. That's terrifying for anyone at any age.
Yeah, it was pretty shitty.
So you're also, obviously the manual labor transpires into things like cleaning people's boats for them, because the Sea Org was once on the sea but isn't on the sea anymore. So to celebrate that, you go and get treated badly by a bunch of mean, horrible old seamen. And then and then what I'm really struggling with now is, once you graduate or however they word it from your training, what are your obligations then as a Sea Org member? Once you kind of move on from the boot camp stage, how do you go on to save the world and complete these missions and better
just do what
mankind?
That you just do what they tell you, and then they tell you how great Scientology is doing, and then you're like, oh great, I'll keep working then, and you just do the menial jobs that they give you.
So
like,
it's
like
just continuously like manual labor and things like that. It's not.
I think so. Sea Org is more like desk job stuff. So like you're calling people, you're getting money, you're running or departments and stuff like that. It's different when you're in the Sea Org. Although I'm sure there is manual labor that you do. There's nothing they won't make you do.
Okay. So you never really go out and do things that better the planet or right? Okay. Because
no. It's all for Scientology.
Okay, I was thinking after the initial training stage, you might go out and do missions in like, I don't know, third world countries. I don't know.
No, they don't have money. Like it's all about money. They're not going to give anything away for free. So they may have orgs in more like third world countries, but they're not going to be giving it to the layman on the street. You have to have money. So it's just wherever they can get money. That's what they're after.
Okay.
And again, I want to preface this with the head of the church. These Sea Org members really do think that they're not just all money grubbing people. They're people who think that they really are helping the world. And as much as I dislike my mom's choice to still be in Scientology, she really believes what she's doing is right. And I think it's really important to remember that, because it's not like they're just money grubbing people.
Yeah, no, I think we do touch on that sometimes in this podcast when we talk about how a lot of the time, if you get a Jehovah's Witness knock on your door and try to convert you or bring you the good word, they are genuinely there because they're worried for your soul and they want to try and help you be saved.
Yeah.
They genuinely believe that a lot of the time, unless they are physically and mentally out. Which we touched upon in some of the episodes, but I guess it's quite similar. You know, they're not there because they're not knocking on your door because they want to annoy you on you know, or just disrupt your day. They're there to genuinely try and better your life, and I guess it's quite similar to what you're saying with Scientologists and members of the Sea Org are genuinely doing what they think is best for themselves and the world.
Their next billion years of their lifetimes to the betterment of mankind. Like they really feel that way. And so it is admirable in that respect. They end up doing a lot of bad things. I mean, they ended up doing that, but they're doing it because they believe it's what's best for mankind. And
unfortunately, a lot of the time these things are being carried out in a system that has been put in place to exploit and abuse people and manipulate and control people. So
and to get those people to do the same thing.
So unfortunately, the good intentions of people aren't always good. In practice. And obviously you're a living, breathing example of that. So what happens? Do you stay in Scientology into your later teens, or do you kind of just get sick of it at some point?
So I one more thing I want to add about the EPS, if that's okay. So while I was there, I was super fucking stressed out. I had a hard time eating. I'd lost a lot of weight. Like I had even had thoughts like, while I was running around, I was like, I really wish I didn't have this fucking body. It's just dead weight. Like it's such dev tea to have to go eat. And I would like think like, I just wish I could drop my body and then be a Thetan. So now like translating, like I wish I would die so I could just be a spiritual being so I could work harder for the church, because there was just all these unrealistic expectations. So in that, I lost a lot of weight, and I actually stopped getting my period for like 7 months while I was there. Which is good if you
also
look at
in the NXIVM documentary as well,
is
because they're starving themselves. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
But I didn't have any money to buy pads, so that was good because they weren't paying me. So it's the only silver lining to that. But yeah, like my body, I was so stressed, and so one of my EPFers noticed that I was stressed, and he wrote a KR and on me not being able to eat. And I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to be able to get the help that I can get, because Scientology is the best thing in the world. It's going to save mankind. It can certainly help the stress that I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
So he writes the KR. I get pulled back. I think it was by like the ethics officer, and he sits on the desk, and it's another like intimidation tactic. I'm sitting in this chair, he's sitting on the desk, and he's like, "So you're not eating?" And it's like, "Well, no." And I try to explain. He's like, "Let me tell you this. So if you don't eat, then we're gonna have somebody sit next to you, and they're gonna have to feed you like a baby. Is that what you want?"
Oh
And I
my
was like, "I guess
goodness.
I really don't want that, but thanks." And there was nothing I could say, and that's how they handled it. Like I lost my period. Like my body was so stressed and under, it
Yeah.
wasn't working right,
You
and they
did,
didn't give a
yeah,
fuck.
yeah. That's it's
Yeah,
like when you're really, really run down and you're like a few days late because your body can't fight
yeah,
off your illness and do the natural things it's supposed to do at the same time. It has to prioritize one or the other. So your
yeah.
body's obviously trying to fight off. You're probably constantly in fight or flight mode, which is
Yeah,
exhausting. So your body's like,
yeah,
oh, what's going on? But at the
yeah.
same time, you're not eating, so you're not giving yourself the nutrition or the, the energy for your body to be
Mm-hmm.
able to do something like provide the period that you should have.
Yeah,
And then his response to that is, well, we'll have someone sit next to you and force feed you or feed you like a baby. What is that
yeah,
response?
yeah. It's not helping. Like, yeah, that was it. And so then I was like, I don't want that. And I continued to not have my period and continued to be that stressed out. And then it didn't do anything. So it turns out Scientology doesn't work.
And they expect you to want to eat when they're giving you bologna and old salted peanuts and you have to eat them with your
Yeah. And
greasy hands.
yeah. And the food, um, it was communal eating when we were not on the ship. And it was okay. I don't remember hating it, but yeah, it was. And I was just so stressed. Like I wasn't hungry. I was, fight or flight mode. I was just
Mm-hmm.
trying to survive what I was going through and
Mm-hmm.
trying to not get attacked again. Like it was just, yeah, super
Oh,
stressful.
when do you leave? Tell me you leave like early,
So
early, early.
I do leave. So I do graduate the EPF. And then I did go home for 2 weeks after that to get my stuff. Um, and that was actually kind of a funny experience because I was on the plane going home and there was a flight attendant waiting for the door. And she's like, "Are you the 13-year-old traveling alone?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you need help finding the thing?" And I was like, "I've been treated like a billion-old Satan for 7 months." And I was
Yeah,
like,
and finally
"No, I'm
somebody's
good."
treating you like an
Yeah.
unattended minor.
Yes. And it was so like, I was almost jarring because I was like, "No, I'm fine. Thank you." And then I come back and get back into LAX very late at night. And I guess LAX is kind of dodgy at night. So I had to there was nobody who could pick me up from the org. So I had to take a van back, just like one of the airport vans back. And so like I'm waiting at the station where they pick you up. And the driver, he's like, "Are you here alone?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Sit up in the front seat, like everything, like sit up close to me."
Oh.
And at the time I was like, "Okay." And then he drops me off outside the building, and come to find out that street's notoriously bad. And he's like, "Take your stuff, just get inside, go right inside." And I like get right inside the
Oh.
building, do not talk to anybody, do not stop. Like, and these people are treating me, as an unattended minor. And it was super weird because I had been treated so differently when I was in the
Mm-hmm.
Sea Org or on the
Mm-hmm.
EPF. So I'm on the Sea Org, in the Sea Org for like 2 months. And usually they give you a post. It's your job. I was an expediter. I had to go to school, quote unquote, because at this point in time I'm 14. And the state of California wanted me to get my GED. So I go to a Scientology school. It's a Scientology school, and but Seer kids would go there, and she just gave us the GED book and was like, "Here, figure it out." And I couldn't ask her any questions, so I ended up just cheating on it because the answers were in the back of the book. So I did that, um, and then one day I woke up and I was like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to get a post." And so I told um, the person who was in charge of me that don't remember her post, but I wanted to leave. And so you have to go through their steps. They have, what are they called? So you're going to route off lines, basically, leaving the Sea Org, something. So one thing that they have is that they have a sec check. It's called a security check. So it's auditing. So it's basically a confessional. So they sit you down with an auditor. So they believe that people have overts and withholds. So overts are like an act that goes against the group that everybody's agreed on, like that's bad.
Yeah.
You don't do it. And then withholds are you're trying to hide those overts. They call it an OW write-up, or your overts and withholds. So they believe that the only reason why you would possibly ever want to leave the Sea Org is because you have created all these overts and withholds. And so they are going to put you in the security check and the sec check, and they're going to interrogate you until they get all those OWs off of you so that you can be free to go about your life in the WOG world. Like that's what they say. But it's really because if you leave and you speak out and they want to, they have all this dirt on you.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was a 14-year-old who didn't have any experience in the world.
Yeah.
But they would ask questions like, are you having lesbian sex with your roommates? Are you guys breaking out dildos and having sex with each other? And like, are you, have you ever fucked a dog? And like all these questions, very like it felt so violating. Yeah, they phrased it differently, but yeah.
At 14.
It was, yeah, at 14, asking all these questions, if I'd ever pleasured a dog, all these things, just so that just in case I could get the OWs off, so that if they wanted to, they could use it against me. I mean, I didn't do any of those things. I don't think anything read, and that made the sec check go on even longer. And they started asking more crazy questions because they wanted something on me.
Yeah, they've got to go into the archives of questioning because you're so young. They're like, okay, let's break out the other books. Let's dust off the other books.
Yep.
And then, so you go back to Canada, and then not long after that, you actually move over to the States.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then move down to Denver.
What's your involvement then with the church if they have an org in that area?
So I have something called a freeloader's debt. So the 5 courses that I took that were basic training for the Sea Org, they now have charged me for all those. So the agreement is if I stay in the Sea Org, I'll never have to pay that amount of money for the courses I take, all that, any auditing I get, they'll cover it all. But if you leave, then now you have to pay them back before you can do any other Scientology anywhere else.
And how much is that then?
So I don't quite know. From what I've heard of other people who have similar time frames, like $13,000, something like that.
I think it's funny how they call it a freeloader's debt when you've given them like thousands of hours of free labor.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Just dicks. All about terminology.
Yeah, and then so you just never paid it back, and you're just like, I don't want to do anything else.
Never did Scientology again, which I was super grateful for that. But my mom got more and more involved.
Yeah, what's her thoughts and reaction on you kind of?
So she was okay with it. She understood the freeloader debt thing that I just couldn't. There may have been a different situation if I had, if I was able to do services there. And then Scientology was in my life. It was in the background. Like my mom joined staff. So a lot of orgs they're called class 5 orgs. So you join staff. So you sign a 2.5-year contract or a 5-year contract, and you're expected to do 40 hours, either 40 hours during the day or 40 hours at night and on the weekend. So she joined staff while trying to support us. So she was working other jobs and doing Scientology, and that also put a pretty salty taste in my mouth for Scientology because we barely had money to pay rent. We could have days without food. It was just, she shouldn't have devoted her time to that. And then she did realize that she needed to take a step back. But then she did end up joining again. And now she's one of their only auditors of the Denver org.
Right. Okay. So she remains true. She's still true. You kind of leave at the age of 14 and don't ever look back. Do you ever get contacted by any members who try and bring you back in? Or
I did, especially at the beginning. A lot of people I knew would send me letters. That's one thing that they have to do every week is send out letters. And then what if this was fucking weird? Um, so I usually, I think everybody does this. Usually, don't answer numbers you don't know on your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I had my phone was in my room and my husband's phone was in the room, and he was out of the room, and his dad had just gone into the hospital. So I got a call on my
Right,
phone,
yeah.
and I didn't pick it up, but then that same number right after called his phone, and I was like, oh my God, it's some update on my father-in-law.
Yeah, yeah.
So I pick it up, and they're like, this is Catherine Gronseth. And I was like, and I don't go by that anymore because that's my maiden name, and I go
Yeah.
by Kat. So that was my first and I was like, yeah, who's this? And then he's like, were you the Catherine who was in the Sea Org? Yeah. It's like, and were you the Catherine? And then he said something else, and then he's like, okay, bye. Like, it was the weirdest thing. But they called my phone, then called my husband's phone, and he's never been in Scientology. It was so weird.
Did your mum have your husband's number?
Oh yeah, that's right. It was probably her.
Yeah,
You're
I was
right.
thinking, how
Yeah.
else would she have got that information unless you're still in touch with people that you knew back in the Sea Org, but then they're not allowed to talk to you. So,
Yeah.
interesting. Interesting. So, I'm running out of time before I have to go. But
Sorry.
I just no, it's me. It's me taking over all your answers by adding more questions in. But I have got to the bottom of my list of questions. Apart from, before I hand it over to you and ask if you think there's anything we've missed, what advice would you give to people who are thinking about making a move out of their group or movement and kind of stepping away and getting out?
I do have a couple things to say on that. First, I was a Christian for a while. I was a Christian from probably about age 15 to about 2.5 years ago. So I've recently left that faith. Now I'm atheist, and I'm happy to be so. So what I would say on both of those fronts, one with Scientology and any Jehovah's Witness, it gets a lot more difficult because, especially if you grew up in Scientology, grew up in an organization where your whole family's in it, and they will disconnect from you. That's really hard, and that's really sad. And that's not something that I know a lot of people can do, but I think it's worth it. There is something called the Aftermath Foundation. They are set up by a bunch of ex-Sea Org members who have their own harrowing stories, and it is meant to get people out of the Sea Org who want to leave, and people who want to get out of Scientology. So they have a lot of resources.
What's that called again? Sorry.
That's okay. The Aftermath Foundation.
And that's a website?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I think that they can be really helpful. I think educating yourself. I know in Scientology, they don't want you, it's strongly discouraged, and you will be punished if you look at outside sources. They just want you to read what the church has put out, what the church has to say. But it is incredibly liberating to realize you're not alone in it. That there's a lot of other people who have experienced things, even if they're not even in Scientology, but other high control groups. There's a bond you can find in that, and that can also help you find strength. If you are leaving Scientology, I highly recommend you read The Barefaced Messiah. It's the actual story of LRH. He's so glorified in Scientology, but he's not a good guy. A lot of the things that he said are made up, and I just highly recommend that. There's this guy named Chris Shelton. I actually did an interview with him, but his channel is basically just Scientology stuff, and so I think that's a really good resource. And what I found with leaving Christianity, it's a very lonely process. Losing your faith, I wouldn't put that on anybody.
No.
But it comes a time where you need to do what's right. Your heart is telling you what to do, and you need to listen. And it's really lonely. It's really lonely, but it's worth it. And I would say stick with it. And there's light on the other side.
Yeah, there's some awesome resources you've given there, and I think you're proof that even if it is lonely and difficult at times, you've got a happy family, you've got your 2 children, and you can talk about these sensitive issues in a reflective way that's not controlling your everyday life, and you're not you're not suffering with every breath from the spiritual and physical and emotional psychological abuse that you endured during those years. So something you've done has worked. Even if it's just, just going up to the person in charge and saying, no, I'm not doing it anymore, I'm going home.
I think finding your voice, and counseling has really helped. Trauma therapy, EMDR, and stuff like that has helped just in general with everything. I highly recommend that. Got some PTSD going on and other stuff, so it's that was really helpful, and especially coming from a religion that is so against psychiatry. Like, it was scary getting help. But I'm so glad I did it. It's not as scary. It's for anybody who is in Scientology who's scared of it, it's not what they said it is. It's not. And you can turn down anything that doesn't make you feel comfortable, and it will be very helpful.
And it's interesting that you can say that the Sea Org wasn't particularly helpful, but therapy has been helpful.
Super helpful.
It's out of the two things, like to psychiatry or to not psychiatry. Which one would you recommend more?
Psychiatry.
Definitely.
It's so much better. And they're so scared of like psych drugs, that's what they call them, like antidepressants, anything like that. Like, and I was super scared, but I got to a point where I needed them. Like, I was suicidal. I needed something, and they helped. They didn't do all the bad things that Scientology claimed that they would do, that they would change my mind, they would make me into a mass murderer. All these things they didn't do. They helped me. And I mean, that was my personal journey with it. And I know other people have different experiences, but it's not what they say.
Most of the people that I speak to have managed to have therapy of some type, and have always spoken about it being something that has greatly improved their lives since moving out of their groups. So I know it's not a resource that's available to everybody. I know it's not accessible to the masses, but if it's an option for you, then definitely consider it, I'd say.
For sure.
So is there anything you think we've missed that you want to go over before we end our call today? I could talk all day. You've given me so much. I've just got this small piece of paper that I've scribbled all over with our notes and information. I know that the other episodes will cover some of the things that we might not have had a chance to touch on today, but I was more interested in your personal story because my other interview was with a young man who left more recently.
Oh wow. Fresh out.
So he didn't want to give any personal experiences that could be applied to him personally. He wanted to explain how Scientology worked as a whole, but he didn't want to give any information that might be able to be directly linked back to him. So he's given us the sort of structure and the basics, and this is how this works, and this and this. Whereas you've given us today sort of the personal effects and insights into what that structure can do to a person and the experiences that somebody might have within that structure. And I know we've talked about some things that have been difficult to talk about and think back on, which I respect and appreciate. You talking to me, telling me about, your father and the relationship with your mum, and the awful things with the men on the boats and the man in the bathroom and things that are difficult. But it's so important to talk about these things because it highlights the types of situations that young people are being subjected to in these types of groups. And older people as well. And I think it's given us a real insight into how Scientology works and how the structure is in place to exploit and abuse people. And I'm not sure. Somebody on Reddit told me that my podcast is probably going to be taken down because Scientology has so much influence in so many areas of the world and so much money to make things happen. So maybe it will. Who knows? But even if that was the case, I mean, you can't be scared into not talking about things that you believe should be spoken about. And you've given us the opportunity to do that today. You've come here and you've told us your story and given us those snippets that we might otherwise not hear about. You just hear people say, well, Scientology is a cult. And you're like, yeah, but why? And how? Because you can't just throw that out there and expect me to believe that that's the case. But then there are testimonies like yours where we understand that actually might be the case. So I really appreciate your time, Kat, and
thank you for the platform. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's a privilege for me to be able to sit down with people who trust me with their stories and want to get the messages out there. So I am really looking forward to seeing where these episodes go and what happens with them.
Yeah.
And I will keep you updated with any feedback we get. But for now, Kat, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Sounds great.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
That is the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can get in touch by emailing me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or find me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.